recognize this melody. Adapted from the novel by renowned Italian-American author Mario Puzo and brought to life by director Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather remains an unforgettable film in history, both for its iconic soundtrack and its dialogue. Both the film and the novel tell the life story of Don Vito Corleone, a mafia boss who emigrated from Italy to America, and his family. In essence, the story is a general summary of the life stories of multiple mafia families. The Italian crime families who gifted the world the word mafia are truly remarkable. Perhaps this also plays a role in the film's popularity. In this episode of Acayip ve Orakip, we'll delve into the lesser-known history of the mafia. We'll delve into the origins of many expressions, from Omerta to Racona. If you're ready, let's begin. Today, we use the word mafia to describe all kinds of criminal organizations. For example, the Japanese yakuza, Albanian crime syndicates, and Russian oligarchs are sometimes called mafia. However, mafia is a specific term. It refers to the crime families that dominate Italy, especially Sicily. In fact, Italy is the only country whose laws directly refer to a mafia organization and a mafia family like the Camorra. The term mafia, in its current meaning, first appears in the 1863 play I Mafiosi di La Vicaria. In the play, there is a gang based in the Paler province. The gang accepts new members with an initiation ceremony, adheres to a code of silence called Umirta or Omerta, and lives off gas money called Pizzu. 2 years later, Palermo's mayor, Filippo Antonio Gualterio, declared that, whether we accept it or not, there is a sect of thieves among us. He was the first statesman to mention the mafia, claiming it had secret signals and that its members weren't afraid of public officials. Interestingly, this mayor's ties to the mafia would later be revealed. So where did this organization originate? First of all, we need to consider the situation in Sicily. Sicily has always been an isolated country, separated from the rest of Italy, for example. There was a Sicilian emirate here from the mid-9th century until the end of the 11th century. Muslim Arab administrators dominated the region. Indeed, it is rumored that the word mafia originated from this period. It is said that it may have been inspired by the rowdy organizations known as Ayyar, or Feta, which began during the Abbasid period. Another theory suggests that when this emirate collapsed and a feudal order was established by the Normans, Arab farmers retreated to the mountains. Indeed, mafia in Arabic means shelter or shade. Another, even more compelling theory points to Arab rule. Sicily, as we mentioned, is a land that frequently changed hands between foreign rulers, and in the 13th century there was a French administration. The local population was constantly in revolt against this French foreign rule. During the Angevin dynasty, a rebel group called the Sicilian Vespers emerged and overthrew the government. During this rebellion, those who rose in Palermo adopted the name Mafir, an Arab tribe, for themselves. Therefore, this is the most plausible thesis regarding the possible Arabic origins of the word mafia. Interestingly, the Vespers' motto was Mortale Francia Italiana, meaning, the death of France is the song of the Italians. Indeed, if you combine the initials, you'll find the word mafia again. Of course, such attributions are generally absurd and later, so there's no need to dwell on it. On the other hand, this etymological debate, the fact that the word mafia dates back to Arab rule, is extremely amusing. However, there's much more we need to discuss. There are important issues, and let's get back to our topic. The Italian mafia, as we know it, actually emerged in the 1800s. As always, Sicily was under foreign rule. In the early 1800s, there was a government in Sicily called the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, known in our sources as Siciliatane. And as always, these were French administrators, not Italians. Bandits have roamed the Sicilian countryside for centuries. Because of its mountainous terrain, peasants, often bored by poverty, retreated to the mountains. One could even say that we have a situation similar to the Anatolian landscape we see in Yeşilçam and İhsan Yüce films. You either become a slave or a carabinieri. On lands called latifundium, dating back to the Roman period, Landowners called gabellotti rented land to landowners living in cities, turning the local population into carabinieri. These gabellottis sometimes collaborated with these local bandits to protect their own property. Ultimately, the best way to protect a thief is to have him attack others. Indeed, today, when we think of the mafia, we think of someone who says, "Let's take you under our protection, and you pay us tribute." Indeed, the mafia protects those it extorts not against others, but against its own evil. Similarly, the gabellottis fed these bandits by paying tribute, ensuring they were safe from their evil and also infecting others. The French Bourbon dynasty in Sicily was also considering using the mafia in those days, because they were uneasy about the Risorgimento, the process of unification and the formation of a single state in northern Italy, and this uneasiness would lead them to make a serious mistake. They gave these bandits free rein to arm themselves against the Italian revolutionaries who were at the forefront of this process. This gave rise to armed structures called counter-squadras. The gabellottis became the leaders of these structures and began to assume the title of capo, meaning boss or mafia boss. These new organizations, thwarting the Bourbons' plans, transformed into a secret organization, a virtual deep state, infiltrated by landlords, bandits, and city lawyers. When Italy unified and became a single state after centuries, this organization took advantage of the power vacuum during the new state's founding phase and took deep root, establishing itself at the heart of the country's citrus trade in particular. The first public act of this new mafia was a strange labor dispute. Between 1875 and 1877, a lemon business owner named Dr. Galati discovered that one of his employees was stealing. This employee, Benedetto Carollo, was naturally fired. However, the company began receiving anonymous letters and threats. Eventually, one of the employees was even murdered. When he followed the trail of these mysterious letters, the doctor reached a priest named Padre Rosario. Padre Rosario was a priest affiliated with the Franciscan order. However, it turned out that his affiliation was a front. Dr. Galati traces these connections. He discovers an organization that reaches out to Don Antonio Giamonla, the leader of the Auditorium Mafia in Palermo, and brings this to the attention of the Italian parliament. Thus, the mafia is questioned before the law for the first time. During the interrogations, the organization's mysterious initiation ceremonies are also revealed. It's an honor different from the honor we know in everyday life. The organization's rules operate almost like a second law, a second morality. As you know, we call these rules racon. Let me note here that racon is a term that has come into our language from the Italian word ration or ragione, meaning reason. So if you're wondering what the mafia's racon is, first and foremost, the Italian mafia's code of silence is of paramount importance. Informants and collaborators, whom the Italians call pentitos, and the American-Italian mafia calls rats, are punished severely. The mafia is obligated to handle its affairs among itself. So even if you're shot in an internal dispute, you shouldn't go to the police, because they say anyone who resorts to the law against their brother is either a fool or a coward. Furthermore, mafia members are told that if they want to live in peace for 100 years, they must be blind, deaf, and dumb. On the other hand, there are cases where members are punished for situations called infamy, such as gambling addiction, drug addiction, or womanizing. So, how did the Italian-American mafia depicted in the Godfather movie originate? This is a crucial question in a way. This movement, which began in rural Italy, had ceased to intervene in politics and serve as a voice for the lower classes by the 1890s, taking the lead. However, millions of people from impoverished Italy had been migrating abroad since the 1870s. Ottoman archive documents even show that some of these migrants arrived in Istanbul and received aid from Sardinia. A small number of Levantines living in our country also likely arrived during this period of quest. The real migration, however, was to America Italians nicknamed Ellis Island, where final checks were conducted before landing in New York, l'Isola delle Lagrime, meaning Island of Tears, because some were forced to separate from their families and loved ones upon repatriation. While the American dream initially created an atmosphere of adventure, the American people were deeply conservative. Perhaps they still are. In some respects, they nicknamed the Italians Dirty Dagos, meaning Dirty Diegos. And they frequently committed acts of violence and attempted lynchings against Italians. Dozens of Italians were lynched to death by the 1890s. On the other hand, Italians were not in short supply. For example, in 1891, New Orleans Police Chief David Hennessy was arrested due to a dispute between two mafia families. They were being killed. Thus, the mafia issue would be brought to the American agenda. The murder in New Orleans, unfortunately, triggered another wave of lynchings in 1891. 19 Italians were executed that same year. Of course, despite this behavior, Italians didn't just celebrate Columbus Day, which commemorated the discovery of the American continent by another Italian, Cristoforo Colombo. Perhaps as a result of these incidents, or perhaps because they continued their old habits in the new Italian neighborhoods, Sicilians in particular began engaging in petty racketeering. It's said that a certain gentleman named Don Vito Cassiofero taught these Italians the art of racketeering. Don Vito taught the Italians the art of drinking milk without breaking a milk bottle. People, he said, would both pay you tribute and be grateful for your protection. In New York, this practice was called Black Hand. Indeed, Operation White Hands, conducted in Italy years later, would take its name from this Don Vito was the prince of the criminal world. He collaborated with leftist revolutionaries in Sicily and was implicated in sensational murders such as the murder of American police chief Petrosino. Not all of the first generation of Italians were as charismatic as Don Vito. Among them were some unfortunate individuals like Giuseppe Morello. The event that spurred them on was the 1921 Prohibition. When Prohibition began in America, they gained significant economic power through bootlegging. Interestingly, as a side note, around the same time, Prohibition, or the Prohibition Law as we call it in our country, was declared. This is a colorful event worthy of the subject of another podcast. Bootlegging was a very profitable business, and it was this smuggling activity that fueled the mafia's rapid growth during these years. For example, the infamous Chicago outfit mafia and its leader, Al Capone, emerged during this period. This was a new and resilient mafia. However, by the 1930s, the old Italian mafia had failed to keep pace with these developments. These are names like Don Pietro, known as Mastiche Pete. And they don't even talk to, let alone do business with, non-Italians. They particularly avoid the Italian and Jewish mafia. They prefer to keep a lower profile. This Italian mafia, what we call the old school mafia, they still manage their businesses by maintaining ties and collaborations with their relatives in Italy. However, at the time, there was a younger generation of mafia members known as the Young Turks. Yes, they used that name, and they kept grumbling, "Oh man, you're not leaving us." Despite these older men, Don Vito was monitoring this process from his mansion in Castello Marese, Sicily. Finally, he sent his henchman, Salvatore Maranzano, to America, sparking a mafia civil war. Don Vito, who had taught the American mafia how to extort money, now intervened as capo di tutti I capi, the father of fathers, and decided to eliminate his old-school compatriots who didn't know how to capitalize on new opportunities. This internal conflict, known as the Castellammare War, was won by the reformers. A group called the New York Five would now rule the criminal world on commission. But as you know, this world was a dirty business. Before long, the New York Five would also pull the plug on Baranzano, imprison him, and thus establish a new order headed by Lucky Luciano. This order, while weakened today, still persists. The Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, Bonanno, and Colombo families comprise these five. They constitute the New York branch of a major crime family known as La Cosa Nostra, or Our Business, which is the very structure Mario Puzo originally explores. The mafia is no longer an ordinary Italian tradition, the movement of provincial toughs hanging out in Italian neighborhoods. It's become a world of ostentatious businessmen, double-breasted jackets, and Ray-Ban sunglasses. What elevates this world to its highest level is its relationship with the state, particularly America. In the 1940s, the fascist government in Italy under Mussolini saw the Italian mafia as a threat to its own power and launched a series of operations. For example, Don Vito Cascioferro was imprisoned in the Italian city of Corleone during this period. Thus, you should understand the origin of the fictional character Don Vito Corleone's name. Furthermore, these operations brought the American state and the mafia a common enemy: the fascist Mussolini and the Italian state. In 1942, America was attempting to convert the French liner SS Normandy into a warship. Meanwhile, a fire of unknown origin broke out in the shipyard, and the ship sank and was scrapped. This unprovoked fire is suspected of sabotage by Italian-born shipyard workers. Someone is needed to infiltrate the Italians and control them, and of course, that person is the Italian mafia. Laco Luciano, who has fallen into the hands of the damned federal authorities, agrees to cooperate with the state and is released with a reduced sentence. Furthermore, in 1943, the U.S. plans an operation off the coast of Sicily, this time called Operation Hasche. The Italian mafia is at the forefront of this operation. Contacts are established with Sicilian mafia leaders, particularly for intelligence. The mafia guides American soldiers. The mafia even provides connections with anti-Nazi villagers. Therefore, an unbreakable bond between America and the mafia was forged during World War II. After the war, American authorities would also utilize the mafia against the communists. Luciano was in exile, but continued to run the mafia from afar. During these years, the mafia, as depicted in Michael Scorsese's film The Secession, dominated the unions and had senators working for them in the legislature. And this relationship is reciprocal. For example, in the 60s, America again used the mafia in the assassination plot against Castro in Cuba. These assassination plots are extensive enough to be a podcast topic in themselves. Everything from exploding propellants to poisoned ice cream is tried, but all to no avail. It was both these failed assassination attempts and the Kennedy assassination in the 60s that changed the course of events. In fact, when Kennedy came to power, the mafia was jubilant and hopeful. Kennedy's father, Joseph, was a former alcohol smuggler. However, Kennedy's brother, who was Attorney General, decided to wage war on the mafia again in the film The Breakdown. They launched an operation against the mafia through Jimmy Hoffa, played by Al Pacino. In October 1963, Joseph Valassi of the Genovese crime family decided to testify. Valassi violated the omerta by exposing the Italian-American mafia in full detail before the Senate. According to FBI reports, Italian mafia leader Carlos Marcello said, "We must get rid of Kennedy while being exiled to Guatemala." Furthermore, a mafia leader named Sam Giancana believed that Kennedy had been our support in the election and that he had betrayed us. Therefore, it is highly probable that the mafia was involved in the infamous Kennedy assassination. This was an event that was highly debated in the public sphere at the time. It was precisely during this period that Mario Puzo published The Godfather. Valassi's confessions were seen as internal showdowns within the mafia, and by the late 1960s, America was beginning to talk about the mafia incessantly. However, neither the Kennedy assassination nor the immense attention generated by The Godfather could save the mafia. The fight against organized crime began in the 1970s with the RICO laws. The mafia was now closed to cooperation with the state. The mafia would become a network of gangs trying to survive among other criminal organizations in America. Indeed, The Sopranos is the series that best illustrates this transformation, which was completed in the 1990s. The characters in The Godfather are as humble as those in The Sopranos are. The more they try to break free, and so to speak, the opposite is true. Meanwhile, in Italy in the 90s, renowned lawyers Falcone and Borsellino launched a major operation against the mafia. In Italy, the mafia, especially the Cosa Nostra gang, had become so rampant that they were waging a civil war on the streets. For example, Toto Riina, leader of the Corleone clan, had reached the point of operating with AK-47s on the streets. Even Italian lawyers who initiated the fight against the mafia lost their lives in bomb attacks. However, Italy had now decided to fight the mafia. The Mani Pulita, clean hands operation, which began in the 90s, dealt a blow to the political aspect of the situation. Today, Cosa Nostra has almost completely lost its former power. The Naples-based Camorra organization is also weakened by internal strife. Meanwhile, the Calabria-based 'Ndrangheta continues to maintain its power. In fact, it's sometimes considered the world's richest mafia family on a global scale. Of course, Turkey hasn't had an Italian mafia problem. However, it was in the 1990s that Turkey encountered the illegitimate realm, the so-called deep state. However, since these topics are somewhat frivolous, we chose to tell you about the Italian mafia. I offer you an offer you can't refuse. Respectfully depart from your presence. Stay with justice, stay with the law, stay in good health, sir.